In this episode, I want to talk to you about itemization throughout the game. I think it's very important on every role in Dota 2 that you spend your gold wisely. You only have like a limited amount of farm, and if you buy the wrong items, you're probably going to have like a lot less impact, or you're going to lose the game. I think that level 1, I usually only focus on buying items for the lane. I don't really care like too much about what items I'm going to buy later or what their lineup looks like. All I care about is the 2 heroes I'm playing against in lane. And now I know, looking at their heroes, it's a little bit unorthodox, but I know that the Mars is a support and the Drow is their carry. So beforehand I buy Ringer Protection, because these heroes pretty much exclusively deal physical damage. A lot of times when you play strength offlaners, you have low armor, so it's a good idea to buy this item just to bulk up a little bit more, especially against like double ranged lanes that are going to auto attack you a lot, or pure physical lanes like Drow Ranger and, like, for example, Drow and Venge, like a common combo that has long range auto attacks, slows you, they're gonna hit you a lot. It's important to buy armor. Moving forward throughout the game, I know playing Axe, I'm gonna be tanking a lot of creeps to farm. That's just how my hero works. So I know I wanna buy Regen. You can see I'm already queuing up a Blink, and then I'm like, yeah, but before I buy a Blink, I need to buy a Ring of Health, because otherwise I'm just gonna lose so much HP by farming that I need to like keep sending out salves or going to base. It's not very efficient. You can tell by playing the lane normally, I just amass a little bit of gold. I make sure that I always have regen. Another thing in the lane is you don't really want to spend gold on regen, but it's really, really bad if you don't have it. So sometimes you just have to like suck it up and do it anyway. The faster you get this Ring of Health item on a lot of offlaners, or you get a lifesteal item, maybe if you're playing Tidehunter, maybe if you're playing Mars, you can lifesteal off the entire creep wave with this one, God's Rebuke, or you can lifesteal off the entire creep wave with Anchor Smash. That can also be a good like build-up item that gives you sustain. Fast forward, I buy boots first because I end up dying, and I realize like I can't just buy my Ring of Regen. This Drow is like hitting me too much. I need to buy boots in order to be able to survive the lane. So you also have to change up your items like a little bit according to what happens. Nobody's perfect and you can't like predict everything. So if you notice a problem, you kind of have to buy items to adjust it. A lot of the times when you buy items, it's to solve issues. I think Blink Dagger is a very good example of that. You might think like, well, Blink is like a really good item, of course I should buy it. But the reason why Blink is a really good item is because the problem with Axe is that my Q spell only has like a very small radius, right? So I need to be close to the enemy heroes. And the best item for me to do that in most cases is to buy a Blink. So the problem is like my positioning, and the solution is to buy a Blink. Right now the problem was getting auto attack to death. So the solution was to buy boots. In some games, like this one, they have a lot of magic damage, so I know I'm probably going to want to buy Pipe because of Zeus and Phoenix and Mars. And my solution to all the magic damage then is, yeah, I'm going to buy Pipe in order to help my team like survive more. Sometimes, of course, having a lot of items, like if I could buy Pipe and I could buy BKB and I could buy Greaves and all the items, you know, every item like in a way offers a solution. So it's all about finding the item that does it the most efficiently. Usually, if you can like find the item that does more than one thing for your team, that's like a really good item to have. Let's say that I buy a Blink, you know, it's like a really good item, but the only thing it does is give me like initiation. But maybe also in some games, if I know like the enemy has very, very poor catch, and it's very hard for them to kill me if I'm like split pushing or farming, Blink is also a great tool to escape or to like make sure that I can split push and keep farming and playing the map. So you have to like think about different ways that your items can have impact. Sometimes I will show you in this game as well. I buy Ghost Scepter. I'm just going to jump forward to explain and talk about my items. Right now I have my Blink. I want to start making moves. I'm like very happy with the progression. I'm going to buy Hood because I want to buy Pipe, and they have a lot of magic damage. And the problem I have right now is that when I jump into fights, I'm getting auto attack to death by Drow. He uses Frost Arrows. It slows me 64%. There's no way for me to reset the fights. All I want to do in team fights is I want to jump in, blink and call, and run away. And jump in and blink and call and run away. And because I'm getting Frost Arrowed, I buy a Ghost Scepter so that I cannot like getting hit by him, and that I can get in and out of the team fights. I finish my Pipe, moving forward over here. So I only have Pipe at 30 minutes. So this problem has persisted, and I've died like 5 or 6 times, which means that I'm not getting a lot of gold. Maybe in some games I could buy a BKB instead. It would probably be a better item against the heroes, but because I don't have the money and because I'm not getting the farm, I need to buy the item like right now that helps me survive the situations. It can be very hard to like see or to find the right item. It's not something that I like thought about right away. You can see I'm pulling a lot of gold, and I'm not like, I haven't bought it even though I had the money, so it takes me a while to understand. And at this point I finally buy it after dying a couple more times, and it's like something I really wish I would have thought about earlier. But because I wasn't finding the right item and I didn't really know what to buy, even though I had like 2,500 gold, in my mind I was still thinking like, I know there has to be an item that I can get right now, or otherwise I'm just gonna buy BKB. So sometimes as well, you need to like keep thinking and re-evaluating. You can maybe have a plan that like, I'm gonna buy BKB or I'm gonna buy like assault cuirass, but then you end up losing a few team fights and you die a bunch of times, and you can feel it like in your head, you're not gonna be able to afford this, or you think like, probably I'm just gonna keep dying. This is not the route I have to take, and you kind of have to like divert and go somewhere else. A lot of the times in competitive games, it can look a little bit funny. I know like, especially OG, I think have a tendency to like buy some small item like Ogre Axe because they want to go BKB, and then they make another call and they be like, no, like we need more damage, and then they buy like a Crystallis, and you run around with like two kind of weird items, and it shows like the thinking behind it has changed, and that's why you have to adapt. So even though you buy like a small item, I think I even bought this crown because I wanted to go Meteor Hammer. My game ended up being really poor, and I had to like skip that idea, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have this stat item, not the worst thing in the world. I have to buy a blink, or I have to buy a pipe rather. We end up winning this game. I think a lot of it actually due to me being able to reset in and out of fights due to the Ghost Scepter. And I think it was like a really big reason why I could play the game I wanted to. Most games you would buy a BKB, and I think that would have been like the better choice. But I think like trying to find, I guess, niche and a little bit weird items that can help you solve the problems that you have and help you do your job as efficiently as possible is always better than just like going the cookie cutter build. I'm sure everyone remember like Thompson buying the Fusel and Gyrocopter at TI9, which is like a really big pickup and talked about a lot. And if he would have like only stuck to his normal cookie cutter Gyrocopter build, like maybe they wouldn't have won that game. Maybe they would actually have lost the TI. So one small item like here and there actually makes a really, really big difference, and it's something that's really, really important in the game. Because I want to have sustain in the lane, and when I'm farming with Axe, I want to buy some type of like regen. And in this case, I know they have a lot of magic damage on their team. I'm going to want to buy Hood and eventually Pipe. That means that even though I want to buy Blink, it's really good for me to just buy the Ring of Health, and I can have it in my inventory for a long time. Sometimes when you buy items, you can buy like build-up items for some items. An example of this, I think, if you're playing carry, well, not Chaos Knight, but you can buy Morbid Mask. And then a lot later into the game, you can buy Satanic. That's like a good example of a build-up item that you know you're gonna eventually use later. In some scenarios, you can even buy items like a Mask of Madness and then split it into like a Butterfly and a Satanic. Obviously, on an offlaner, you're not buying these items, but there's like a lot of scenarios when I would buy a Ring of Health and I build it into a Hood, or I build it into a Vanguard, or maybe I finish my Meteor Hammer, you know? So in this scenario, there's like 3 different items that I can buy with it. I actually think in this game, at first I wanted to buy Meteor Hammer because I think it's like a fun thing to do on Axe, and I wanted to try it out. My game ended up not being great, so I like diverted and went to the Hood instead. So sometimes it can also be good to buy build-up items that has multiple like choice, or like more than one option. For example, use the smallest thing like Ring of Protection. If I buy this one, I can both buy Buckler or like Soul Ring. So sometimes in some games, I don't know if I want to go Soul Ring or not. Maybe I end up buying Arcane Boots or Bottle. I'll have the Ring of Protection and I'll turn it into a Buckler instead. And then like you can a lot later into the game buy Assault Cuirass with this item. So it's like an item that's always valuable, and you save gold maybe even 30 or 40 minutes later when you turn it into your AC. Maybe you run out of inventory slot, you can just keep it in your stash or keep it in your backpack because you know eventually I'm gonna want to buy Assault Cuirass. In this game, I want to show an example of when I'm playing Pangolier. And as you can see, I have a Ring of Regen in my inventory. Normally when I play Pango, I like to buy mangoes. If you can look at the stats of the item, it gives you 0.6 HP regen. So 3 mangoes is like 2.1 HP regen, costs 210 gold. This item is only 1.5. You can see it costs 1.75 or 175. So the like regen per gold stat is like equal to mango and the ring, and the mangoes also give me mana. So I would say most of the time mangoes is like a better item to buy. However, I know in this game that I'm gonna want to buy mech and eventually Guardian Greaves. So for that reason, I buy the ring so I can build it into Mechans because it's used in part of the headdress. These small things, of course, it's only like 175 gold. It's not the biggest deal, but if you do this a lot, like eventually it's gonna add up. And a lot of the time you can find yourself being like 100 or 200 gold, or even just a creep wave away from BKB or like a Guardian Greaves. And if you would have done this, like you would have been able to have that item just in time. So it can also be like a very big thing in certain situations to have that little bit of extra gold. The reason I want to buy Guardian Greaves in this game is because I know I just want to tank up, and there's a few items that let you tank up. You know, there's like Pipe, Crimson, Greaves, even BKB in a certain way. The difference between Greaves and all the other items, or at least between Pipe and Crimson, is that Greaves is pretty multi-dimensional. It gives you mana and HP to the entire team. It gives you like this armor aura and the HP regen and a huge dispel for yourself. And because they have Death Prophet and they have this Batrider who's gonna stick in Napalm, I really like buying like Lotus Orb or Greaves. And I don't really want to start with Lotus because it doesn't give me any HP regen, it doesn't give me any HP pull, and doesn't really like tank me up. It only gives me armor. They have a pretty big mix of damage, so just buying a Pipe or a Crimson is only gonna target like half their lineup, I would say. By buying Mech or Greaves, you usually cover like lineups that deal both physical and medical damage because you're just buffing the HP pull of your team. You're not like strictly buying Pipe and then this Juggernaut is gonna only slash, you know. The Guardian gives help against both of them. To understand why I want to tank up and why you want to be tanky, you also have to think about like how the game is gonna look like and what your team is gonna do and what the enemy team is gonna do. Because I have two greedy cores that's just gonna want to farm, I know that I have to fight a lot, and because they have a really strong initiator on their team in this Batrider who's gonna buy a blink, I know there's not really any way for me to not get jumped. Like, if he wants to go on me, he's going to be able to do it. And for that reason, I think it's really important to tank up. When the enemy team has really strong catch heroes, like, I guess Puck, Bat, Void Spirit, anything like this, it's a lot better to try and tank up and to soak the spells instead of building like some type of Maelstrom MKB build, where I'm just going to stay back and deal damage, which is the same thing as the other two cores want to do. You need to kind of try and fill like the empty space or the role in your team that nobody else is going to take. And the nice thing about Dota is you can always like change your hero with the items that you buy. In some games, if we would have had like an Underlord mid and a Dragon Knight carry maybe, well, we have a lot of initiation and we have a lot of tankiness, but we have very low damage. Then like 100% I would have bought like Maelstrom and farmed a lot more and gone like Monkey King Bar, gone this Aghanims, like big Pango Altair roll build, so that later into the game we have damage to kill like the Chaos Knight when he ultis, we have damage to kill the Juggernaut like on a stun. You need to like adapt to your team, but most of the time you're not like the hero building for damage, you're not the hero building as a carry, you're like building either to initiate if you can, or you're building to tank and soak if that's gonna be your job. Like in this game I end up like having to defend a lot of towers, I end up having to bait a lot of team fights, and like the Guardian Greaves is like a huge like buff for me. If I just want to look at the item, it's also when you go below 20%, you get like a regen and an armor aura. So it's a really good way to be able to get gone on and then like get out and survive with like a very low HP pool, because you're like get a lot tankier when you're low as well. Following up, I buy a blink in this game because I think that we had troubles initiating. Just looking at our lineup, Earth Spirit, while he can start fights in the early game, it gets a lot harder for him when people have magic immunity like the spin. When people have more items, he has Mount as well, he can dispel silence. You know that Bat is very fast with his Firefly, he runs around like really quick. Windrunner as well, really quick with Windrun. Like he's not going to be reliably able to initiate. So I know that like I have to make up for it by buying a blink. So if we see somebody, I can start rolling from over here and then like blink on top of them, and we have a way to start fights. In, I would say, the early game, like the laning phase and the early mid game, it's not that important that you're able to initiate. But when team fights are about to break out, like maybe 20-30 minutes, you're entering more like a mid-late game scenario, it's really important to make sure that you have initiation on your team, and usually that role also falls on the offlaner. In this game, I want to show you a game where I play Batrider and the items I go and like my thought process behind it. In the start of the laning phase, Batrider has extremely poor attack damage. You can see he has like 42. So I buy a couple of Fairy Fires to get more damage to last it with. I know that I have Shaker, which is going to get me lane control, which means that a lot of the lane is going to come down to last hitting in the start, like in the early game. You can see right now that they can't really go on me. It's not that important for me to have like a lot of regen or to tank up a lot. And because I'm going to be playing mostly 2v1, I'm also not buying like a lot of mana items and mangoes. I'm not going to spam my sticky like 24/7. In some lanes you want to play really aggressive. Maybe you want to like try and rush an early boots. Maybe you want to buy like a Sage Mask or a mango so you can always go on the enemy, always pressure. In some lanes you have to understand like it's mostly going to be a farm lane. I'll probably buy more stat items. Maybe I'll buy a quelling blade and like a couple of bracers on a strength hero. Maybe on Batrider you can buy start buying a null talisman in addition to a couple of fairy fires. You kind of need to predict like what heroes you're playing against. Against TB, against Spectre, these carries that are just going to want to farm, it's always usually going to come down to like a farm game. Ideally, of course, you would like to kill them, but it's like pretty hard and they usually play pretty safe. Against heroes like Juggernaut, for example, who's going to want to kill you, it's really important that you have regen. I usually buy a fairy fire so you get that like little bit of extra HP boost. Maybe you want to buy boots earlier so you can run away from the spin. Maybe you want to buy like a magic wand and a bracer so that even if you're not a strength hero, you can tank up and survive. So you always need to like adapt to the lane with the items that you buy. Moving forward, I have just finished my Boots of Travel. This is like an item that's kind of cookie cutter for Bat. A lot of this hero abilities revolve around being fast and being able to stay on top of them with Firefly. But because you're like not very naturally tanky, you don't really want to be in the front line. So movement speed helps you with your positioning. Another thing where it's such a great item on Bat is because your lasso is kind of your only like real teamfight spell. If your lasso is on cooldown, you don't really want to be fighting, so you want to be farming during that downtime. And in order to be able to farm like consistently, the travels from the TP from the Boost of Travel has a way lower cooldown, and you can like connect the creep waves. And because your hero can't really farm jungle, or you can farm like one camp here and there, but it's a lot better to go on a creep wave and then run around and kill the next one. Traveling to creep waves is like the best way for your hero to farm. So a lot of people buy Boost of Travel on this hero. It's like a very cookie cutter items. Some heroes like Axe has like Vanguard, which is naturally good because he's getting tanked by a lot of creeps. You know, some heroes like, for example, Brewmaster by Vlad's, because when he's in his ultimate, his creeps need more armor and like he can't really use items anyway, so you just end up buying auras. So it's really good to like know what standard items people buy for the heroes that you play and to try and like understand why you buy them. Now in this game, we have an Earthshaker, which is gonna buy Blink, and he is able to initiate. Problem with initiating with Earthshaker is that unless the enemy is trying to lose the game, they're probably only going to be able to be one guy at a time. With Earthshaker, you want to find like a lot of people stacked together, and you want to get this big echo slam that's going to like win you the team fight. That means that probably I have to go first, and I have to be the one like initiating. So I'm going to want to get a Blink in this game for that reason, and for the reason that they have no save on the enemy team, which means they can't disrupt my lasso. So basically I know like if I can blink lasso somebody and get out of the team fight, or like rather without getting counter initiated, I know we're gonna win the team fight. All the items I buy in this game is basically just items that lets me jump in, lasso one guy and drag him out. Like maybe I jumped his TB, I drag him away from his team into my team. Really good items for Batrider is like Force Staff, for example. Lets you push yourself a little bit closer to your team. Also lets me, for example, get out of cogs if I don't have Firefly. Lets me like help my teammates escape. There's no real items you can buy in this hero that's going to let you deal a lot of damage. I don't think you've ever seen like a Mjolnir Batrider, you know, like pumping out auto attacks. That's not how you want to play. So instead you end up playing around your spells and around utility. And because of that, like you always end up buying like Force Blink. Maybe you buy a Shivas to tank up in certain scenarios to deal with illusions like PL. But in general, your items are going to look pretty much the same in every game. To understand which items are or like why your items are so important as well, is that right now I don't feel like I can really get any spells off in teamfights. I don't feel like if I like run in with Firefly, I'm gonna like get a last on the TB. You know, he's just gonna run away. The DK will like blink and stun me. It's very, very hard for me. So because of that, I understand like until I get my blink, I'm not a very effective hero. I'm mostly just focusing on farming, and you can see like the way I'm playing on the map is that I'm not really running at the heroes. We're not really making any smoke moves. I understand like my lack of items is what limits me in this game, and that's why I'm like focusing on just farming all the time. Of course, I have two other heroes that are also gonna farm, so it's important that you take like the scary space and that you're taking like the, yeah, I guess like the offlaners part of the map, which is the most risky area, but you still do it without dying, at least until you get your item. I would say until I have my blink, I'm gonna like treat myself like a carry. I'm not gonna wanna fight at all. I'm not gonna take any risks, but once I have my blink, I know that I have enough items now where I can do my job and be effective. It's not that important for me to stay alive anymore. It's more important that I let other people like take control of the game and farm, and I will just try and make plays and catch people off guard. At the same time, there's more items that I can buy, and looking at their team, they have this Dragonite with a blink stun, which was a big problem for me this game. Later on, a lot of the time if I would jump in and lasso people, he would stun me, and I would get auto attack to death by TB illusions. So I ended up buying a Force Staff, so I could try and like get out of there before he reached me. I find the target, I force myself right away, maybe it's not in range. I also ended up buying a Ghost Scepter because the TB illusions was creating a lot of problems for me in the team fights. I'm not that tanky, and like jumping in and getting stunned once, I would like die to a lot of TB illusions. So what I did was I would jump in, activate Ghost Scepter as I lassoed somebody, so that even if they went on me, I wasn't dying. And that was at least like a very good step in the right direction, just because you can look at a team, they don't really have any damage on their other heroes. They would have to like black hole me to kill me if I'm Ghost Sceptered. So it's like one of these items that's really, really good to buy if they only have physical damage cores, especially heroes like TB, he's like very immobile. So these like 3 or 4 seconds are usually the only time that you can take damage. It's very easy to kite him afterwards. Certain heroes like, I guess, Storm Spirit, like yeah, Ghost Scepter is good because he has to auto attack you, but he can kind of just like wait it out or go on another target right away or jump you again afterwards. It's not like the highest impact item that you can buy. Jumping forward as well, once you get really farmed and you get to like the late game part of the game, you have a lot of freedom in what items you want to buy. Usually I tend to always buy items that lets me survive or lets my team survive. Like my 3rd or 4th item is not going to be like more initiation. I already have my lasso, you know, I'm not really going to buy like a Hex or something. Maybe I would buy like a Shivas because they have so much physical damage, but it's also important that your items make sense with each other. So I don't really want to buy Shivas to tank up when I already have a Ghost Scepter that makes me immune to physical damage. Those items would like kind of clash. Logically it doesn't make too much sense. So instead I'm queuing up a Linken's against the Dragonite, and I can both have it on myself to stop them from counter initiating, so I can like lasso people freely, or I can put it in this scenario like on my Luna so that he can push out lanes and go high ground without being scared. Sometimes buying items like Lotus Orb and Linken's is really, really good to put on your carry or to put on other people in your team, especially if you're going to play a hero that stays back. Heroes like Doom and Batrider themselves really rely on being able to get their like single target spells off, and people very commonly buy Lotus Orb, and it's like really hard to play around. It has a low cooldown, and you can throw the spell on yourself. Obviously, that's what the item does. So thinking about items that usually in the late game that help your team instead of helping you is like more important. Linken does both, but a lot of games like at this point, I would just be buying items like maybe Solar Crest, Assault Cuirass, and Vlad. That's like auras. Maybe I would end up buying a Force Staff, even if I'm playing like Slardar or Axe or something and it's very late into the game. I'm not going to be that farmed anymore, and it's more important to buy items that help my team. So like buying a Force Staff on Axe, it might look really silly, but if the problem we have is that like my Luna's getting hooked and dying, and like my Venge is swapping him out, but then maybe my Luna is like getting hooked and dying again, if this guy would have an Axe, for example, I would just be like, hey, it's fine, I'll buy a Force Staff. It doesn't really matter what items I have as long as you can deal damage. So when it comes to buying items, you want to make sure that you always buy items that are efficient and they're good for like the entirety of the game. You don't only want to buy items like, for example, you can think early into the game, oh, it would be really nice for me to have like a Sun in Yasha right now. Like, oh, I want to run around really quick. I feel like movement speed is going to help. And then they buy a Blink, and you're like, oh shit, this like movement speed item really did nothing for me because they bought a Blink. So you want to think ahead. You want to make sure you buy items that scale and are going to be good for your hero. I think the most important thing to understand is like timings in the game. At a certain point, people are going to have a lot of items and there's going to be a lot of team fighting, and you want to try and understand what point in the game that is. So if it's like going to be a very quick game, you need to buy more fight items, maybe an earlier BKB, maybe a Blink right away. If it's going to be a really slow game, maybe you can afford to buy some build-up items, some farming items, maybe even a Midas if you're greedy, and then you hit your item timings. Understand what your role is and what you can get away with and how much you need to fight, and buy items accordingly. And last thing as well is, in the early game, you usually buy items for yourself. You buy like a Blink, items that help your hero. But as an offlaner, you're not really the hero that deals damage. So in the late game, you want to buy like support items, or even in the mid game, like Solar Crest, Force Staff, Assault Cuirass, Guardian Greaves, whatever items that helps your team and helps you carry output damage. It's usually going to be better than buying like damage items for yourself.